For most of human history, you were not alone. Not as a person, as a species. There were others. And the closest ones, the ones who looked almost like you, were Neanderthals. They lived in Europe and Asia for over 300,000 years. They had bigger brains than you do. The average Neanderthal cranium was about 1,500 cubic centimeters. Yours is about 1,350, which is a humbling way to start a video about why they are gone and we are not. In 2018, researchers used uranium-thorium dating to analyze cave paintings in 3 Spanish caves and found that the art was over 64,000 years old. Neanderthals were painting on cave walls while Homo sapiens were still exclusively in Africa. One hand stencil in Maltravieso cave was dated to at least 66,700 years ago. It is one of the oldest known cave paintings on Earth, and a Neanderthal made it. They buried their dead with apparent rituals. They crafted complex stone tools that required planning and practice. A site in England shows they controlled fire over 400,000 years ago. A rock found in Spain bears what is likely a Neanderthal fingerprint pressed into ochre roughly 43,000 years ago. The oldest fingerprint in the world belongs to a species that no longer exists, and then, roughly 40,000 years ago, they vanished, every single one of them. Gone. But here's the strange part. They are not entirely gone. Between 1 and 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal. Right now, sitting inside your cells. Not as some fossil relic, but as active genetic code that may be influencing your immune system, your skin, your mood, and your risk of disease as you listen to this. So what happened? How do you wipe out an entire species of human and then carry their genes inside your body for the next 40,000 years? Starting around 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa and walked straight into Neanderthal territory. Europe, the Middle East, Central Asia. Your ancestors had spent their entire evolutionary history in Africa. Warm grasslands, open skies, familiar predators. And then they crossed into Ice Age Europe. Dense forests, freezing temperatures, megafauna they had never seen before. And somewhere in those cold valleys, they encountered people who looked almost human, but not quite. Stockier, heavier brow ridges. Neanderthals had been mastering this landscape for hundreds of thousands of years. Homo sapiens were the newcomers. 110,000 years ago, the two species were already sharing technology and burial customs in the Levant. This was not a sudden collision. It was a slow, drawn-out encounter that lasted tens of thousands of years. And for roughly 7,000 years during the main overlap period, the two species shared the same forests, the same rivers, and occasionally the same caves. And somewhere in those valleys, two groups saw each other clearly for the first time. Now, when most people imagine this encounter, they picture a war. Spears flying, tribes clashing, survival of the fittest. And there probably was violence. But the DNA tells a completely different story. Because during those 7,000 years of overlap, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals did not just fight, they had children together. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania, led by Alexander Platt and Sarah Tishkoff, analyzed the X chromosomes of both species. Modern humans today carry almost no Neanderthal DNA on their X chromosome. It has been almost completely scrubbed clean. But Neanderthal genomes show a 62% excess of Homo sapiens DNA on their X chromosomes. What does that mean? It was overwhelmingly Neanderthal men having children with Homo sapiens women, not the other way around. The researchers suggest it likely reflects mating preferences and social dynamics between the two species. One possible explanation is that Neanderthal men and sapiens women chose each other repeatedly across generations. This sounds like a love story. It was not. Because while all of this was happening, Neanderthals were disappearing. There was no great war, no asteroid, no plague. It was slower and stranger than that. Around 110,000 years ago, their population went through a catastrophic genetic bottleneck. Most of them died. The survivors were left with dangerously low genetic diversity, which made them fragile. They lived in small, isolated groups scattered across a vast landscape. When things got bad, they had no network to fall back on. Homo sapiens were the opposite: larger groups, wider social networks, more connected communities. When climate shifted or food ran out, sapiens adapted. Neanderthals, isolated and genetically fragile, could not keep up. The interbreeding itself may have helped erase them. Every generation of mixed children grew up in sapiens communities, raised as sapiens, speaking sapiens languages, using sapiens tools. They did not go extinct in a battle, they were slowly absorbed into us. But their DNA survived, and it is not just sitting there quietly. The most dramatic example hit the entire world in 2020. When COVID-19 swept the planet, scientists discovered that a stretch of Neanderthal DNA on chromosome 3, carried by about 50% of people in South Asia and 16% of Europeans, nearly doubled the risk of severe illness. A gene cluster inherited from a species that has been dead for 40,000 years was making people sicker in modern hospitals. But the same Neanderthals also left us a gift: a different set of genes on chromosome 12, the OAS cluster. About 30% of non-African people carry this variant. It reduces the risk of severe COVID by roughly 22%. The same extinct species gave us both a vulnerability and a defense, 40,000 years dead and still sending mixed signals. And it goes far beyond one virus. Neanderthal DNA appears to affect how your blood clots. One inherited variant is associated with faster coagulation. Today, research suggests it could increase the risk of blood clots and stroke. Other Neanderthal variants have been linked to depression risk, particularly those near circadian clock genes, the ones tied to your sleep-wake cycle. Still others are associated with hair color, skin pigmentation, and even the physical shape of your skull. Brain imaging studies found that individuals carrying more Neanderthal genetic variants tended to have skull shapes statistically closer to Neanderthal morphology. 40,000 years later, traces of their architecture may still be showing up in MRI scans. Here's what gets me. We talk about Neanderthals like they are ancient history, like they are something behind glass in a museum. But over 50% of the entire Neanderthal genome still exists, scattered in fragments across billions of living people. They are not behind glass, they are inside you, possibly shaping how you fight infections, possibly influencing whether you wake up feeling fine or feeling off, maybe even leaving traces in the shape of your skull. They went extinct, but their code is still running. If this changed how you think about your own DNA, subscribe. This channel explores the ancient code still running inside your mind, and there's a lot more hiding in there.